Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Writers Infusion. I'm your host, Susan. I'm here with Jen, Julie, and Ed. Dave is going to comment offline as well. We are here today to discuss historical fiction. The title is Afterglow by Christopher Roche. This submission is from Texas.
Oh, well, great.
And Julie is going to read the submission.
Afterglow. Summary. In the final years of World War II, in the secret city of Los Alamos, Mary Rice, a brilliant physicist, has the ultimate chance to redeem a slumping career, taking part in the greatest scientific project of the century until a moment of hesitation leads her to an act of treason. Dun, dun, dun. Mary received 2 overseas calls about 1 hour apart. The first was to prepare her for the second, whose purpose in turn was to tell her to pack her bags if she was still interested in tube alloys, that is. Her lab mates dashed back and forth past her office window, sometimes lingering curiously, since word had spread through the Chicago Metallurgic Laboratory that another of their ranks had gotten the call and would soon disappear. "Well, cheerio then," Sir James said. "All right, bye," Mary replied. Mary set the telephone receiver onto its hook and sat silently. She bit a loose clip of thumbnail, then moved on to her forefinger, but there was nothing there left for her to bite. By now, 3 of her American assistants, all young men and PhD candidates at the university, observed her expectantly, unashamedly, through the window. She put on a gap-toothed smile and raked frail fingers through her hair, which, since relocating to America, had lightened from the color of bits of chocolate to tea and milk, and would fade to caramel under the New Mexico sun. "You'll need an alias," Sir James said, without looking up from the leather-bound portfolio spread on the table between them. It was all he said to her since meeting up in the dining car, he from first class, she from second. After a breath, he added, "Chocolate cake would be good." "As an alias?" Sir James sighed. "To eat. These American trains are rough and unsanitary. I've no appetite, but chocolate cake would be good." He showed her a document. It listed names of other British scientists on the mission, alongside their inconspicuous traveling names. Mary giggled, and even Sir James could not suppress a tightly held grin. "Tom Hicks? Billy Porter? Henry Farmer?" she teased. "Sir James, you can't be serious. They do realize that Billy Porter doesn't speak English." "It's absurd, I know, and call me Jack." Mary laughed out loud. The G2 officer seated at the opposite corner, the only other person in the dining car, looked up and frowned. "I'm sorry," she took a deep breath, "but that," she continued, "will not be possible. Only in Santa Fe." "And what am I to be called then?" she asked. Sir James simply shrugged, ordered a slice of chocolate cake, and sank back into his portfolio until it arrived. Mary removed a stubby and well-gnawed pencil from behind her ear. She was never without one. It was a habit learnt from Mr. Merchant. The foreman of Solstow Home taught her, among other things, many other practicalities as a child, to always carry a pencil and a pad. "Even to the bath?" she asked. "Especially to the bath, dear girl. Did you know that 90% of the greatest human ideas were conceived in bathtubs? It's the steam, you see. Gets the blood flowing through the brain in a particular way, you see." It became a trademark of sorts, the pencil behind the ear. Now Mary was a child, not blessed with ears that laid back prettily or suited to the task of bearing pencils. So Mary practiced. She could, by the time she started public school, carry as many as 4, drawing them as an archer draws an arrow. Mary had also developed an early obsession for baths. Each night she soaked in water so hot her backside glowed pink. She shared a bathroom with 4 brothers who paraded in and out without evidence of thought of discretion, casually chatting and using the toilet beside her. "Charlie scored a goal today." Shortly after Mary's 10th birthday, Mary's mother had Mr. Merchant install a lock on the children's upstairs bathroom door. In-person interruptions gave way to nightly barrages of door banging. Her little brother Archibald, now 2 years out of nappies, was hopelessly confused as to Mary's sudden need to conceal herself behind locked doors at bath time. "Go away!" she shouted through the door. "But it's cold, let me in!" In such a scalding bath with such a pencil, the notion of rearrangements of matter in low-energy magnetic fields first popped into her head. The thesis earned Mary at 16 the International Minot Student Prize. In her speech, Mary thanked Mr. Merchant for instructing her in the value of pencils and baths. And now, in January of 1944, she shared dessert with Sir James Chadwick, Nobel Prize winner, discoverer of the neutron, discussing the need for code names as they approached their top secret mission. Monikers? Mary wrote names on her tablet and struck through them in turn. Martha Smith, Jane Smiley, Betty Jones, Lucy Merchant, Mary Minot, Mary Welty, Merry-Go-Round, Mary Chadwick, my era, Chocolate Cake, Helga von Ramsteiner. She smiled, then struck through that name as well. 2 days later, Mary and Sir James were met at Lamey Station by the General and his driver and shared a jarring car ride over a narrow, pitted highway in the coldest hour of dawn. Mary sat in front. The driver was a WAC, W-A-C, whose teeth visibly clenched, whose jaw flexed, and whose knuckles were as white as the ghostly wisps of snow that followed alongside the car all the way to Santa Fe. Sir James assumed a cool, relaxed posture, angled comfortably into a corner of the back bench. The General sat forward, almost off the seat, expressing himself with large General's hands, clinching and unflinching, pointing and counting off, and then clinching once more. They conversed in the coded language of the Manhattan Project. T is showing some signs of wear, but Y3 is confident we will have it serviced in time for the L7. We're looking at a CWA as well, then? Well, obviously. Mary had arrived in America 3 years prior, when the code name for the nuclear weapons project was still Tube Alloys, a name near meaningless slapping together of words that sounded sufficiently scientific to give cover to her delegation during travel. In Washington, she had seen Lewis again, for the first time since 28. When the coast was clear, they had met for cocktails in the lobby of the Hamilton Hotel on 14th. The following morning, the sun broke through the muslin curtains of Lewis's room. Mary awoke. Lewis lay beside her, knee propped up. He stared at the ceiling, smoking. But very soon, he began, continuing a line of thought that had begun the night before, but had been interrupted when Mary took his hand by the elevator. Very soon, the Americans are going to stop listening and start demanding. Mary rolled over, taking Lewis's cigarette. I don't care about the politics. I just want to work. Lewis was right, and now the Americans held the lead role, and the project had a fresh American-style code name, the Manhattan Project. This became its own problem. The name itself was so irresistibly intriguing, it needed aliases of its own, the Gadget, for one. And Mary's new home for the next couple of years had code names, The Hill, Site Y. When she telephoned Dr. Cockcroft and gave her new official residence, it was Post Office Box 1663, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Cockcroft had laughed a silky laugh and said, It must be an enormous box. Everyone I know lives there. The WAC brought the General's car to a stop on a side street perpendicular to the plaza. The General, Sir James, and Mary ate a mostly silent lunch of green chili stew with hominy and cornbread, washed down with lukewarm glasses of what the waitress assured Sir James was, in fact, tea. Afterwards, Sir James showed Mary to the administration office, where a certain Mrs. McKibben presented Mary her New Mexico state driving license. Accordingly, she would be Driver 88. She was likewise given a single sheet of green paper detailing her cover story. Excuse me, Mrs. McKibben, she said. Mrs. McKibben turned and smiled. She wore dark-rimmed sunglasses, a gold cardigan sweater, and no makeup. Mary later said of Mrs. McKibben in a heavily censored letter to Cockcroft, her disguise was clever. She was clearly underneath it all a real beauty. I suppose it must be a laugh at first, teasing out one's hair, cigarette hanging out of the corner of one's mouth while banging out note cards on a typewriter. I imagine at the end of the day, Mrs. McKibben goes home, does up her hair, slips into a tight black dress, dons high-heeled pumps and red lipstick, and sits by the wireless, eating ice cream. Yes, dear, Mrs. McKibben replied. Is it possible to change my cover story? The woman chuckled. Don't I wish? She leaned forward and placed a matronly hand on Mary's shoulder, looked side to side, and whispered, Say you meet some nice fella at the bar. He asks what you do. You say secretary. Take it from me, honey. No man will press you for any more details. Mary smiled. Oh, one more thing. Mary turned. Don't talk to nice fellas at bars. Church, honey. That's where the good ones are. She winked and turned back to her typewriter. Sir James was waiting outside. All set then, Miss... Mary sighed. Cavendish, apparently. Miss Cavendish. Very good. They've given me an alias that actually makes me sound more British.
You know, I thought that I liked the premise, and I thought there was a lot of really good humor in this, a lot of really
Yes.
good
Yeah.
one-liners,
Yeah.
and it made me laugh a
I
lot.
like Mrs. Cavendish. I like her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that, you know, she's got a good basis going. I think I have, though, a lot of technical things that made it
Okay.
a lot harder for me to read.
Yeah.
So the first was that she was just moving between settings so much that
Yes.
by the time I get back to, I'm like, what was even going on?
Yep.
Christopher, is it he?
Oh, he. Oh,
He.
thank you.
Yep.
Sorry. Sorry, Christopher. So he was moving back and forth so much between scenes that I would just get lost.
Yeah.
And you know, and it's like the backstory thing that you always talk about
Yeah.
after the first page when she goes back and she's talking about getting
Yep.
ideas in the bathtub. Like maybe you could do it just to explain the pencil thing, maybe, but then stop.
Right.
There was so much going on that by the time they came back, I forgot what country
Yeah,
she
times
was
and
in.
Yeah.
places.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
the
she did it again
transitions.
back to when she was with Lewis. So she kind of,
Yeah.
see, I'm saying he,
He.
Yeah, so the protagonist were thinking
Right,
through
yeah,
it.
kind of went
Eyes.
back and forth and, you know, very,
Yeah, in one paragraph, went 3 different times.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I don't, it didn't move the story forward.
Yeah.
So I just
Right.
kind of wrote in here, read our blog about backstory.
I did too.
And did you?
Ah, excellent.
You know, I have to say, I was in from line 1 of the summary.
Physics?
because- Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
I-
me too.
Our resident
I admit it,
physicist.
I have a PhD in theoretical physics, and I'm a fan of Manhattan Project lore.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I mean, when I actually got chills when I found out that Sir James was Sir James Chadwick. When they said Sir James Chadwick, I was like, oh, you got to meet James Chadwick?
Christopher
Yeah.
Chills, that's a nice
cats.
compliment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was
uh,
really neat. I love that too.
So I would love to see more of this.
I liked the voice in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the sentence structures were complex, but I followed it. You know, so you know, Christopher would say something, and then there'd be a side thought in parentheses, and then finish the sentence. But it was done in a way that I didn't lose myself in the. You know, I didn't have to go back and read it 3 times.
Yeah.
Right.
And I thought that added nicely to the whole voice of the story.
Yeah.
I liked it. It's somewhat. I don't want to. The word old-fashioned probably isn't correct, but it's timely, right? So it's to
Right.
the 1940s.
It's period.
Right.
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 Yeah.
So
That's good.
it doesn't sound modern. It definitely you can tell this is taking place just from the way that people talk
Yes.
Yep.
and the voice that it's not current. I mean, obviously we all know what was going. You know when it happened because of.
Sure.
You know we all know when the bomb was being developed, but still I thought the voice was done really well.
It was. You know, so I guess when we talk about setting and moving back and forth, then I would just look at this and take out everything that takes you back and read it. Because sometimes
Yeah.
it can be tough when it's your own writing that you think it really
Right.
needs to be there, but it really doesn't.
Or it belongs somewhere else
Or
later
it
in the
belongs
story.
somewhere else,
Yeah.
which is what
Yeah.
I wrote.
Yeah.
Or that some of it, like when we find out that she, what she did at age 16 when she won the award or whatever, you could work that into a conversation with Sir James. I mean, we chose you and, you know, because blah, blah, blah. And we
Yep.
know you. So that's something like that little piece that you'd think you'd want to know out of all that backstory
Right.
that you can work into a present conversation. The other part that I had, well, I guess there are 3 things. So on the second thing, even if you look at the very first page, I think it needs to be tightened. I had to read this a few times to really understand what was going on. There's repeating of words, like in the first paragraph, she's talking about people going back and forth at the office window, and then she does it again a paragraph later. So you have to keep in mind at the very beginning, you've got to really make sure it's tight, and that you're only saying what you need to say. So for example, when Sir James says, well, cheerio then, Sir James said, I put a comma and said ending the call and took out the next line. So
Right.
just to
Right.
make it so precise.
I didn't know it
Getting
was a
in.
phone call. I mean,
Right.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think, at first I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
where are
Yeah.
they from? Like, I was really a little bit confused. The other part that really confused me was there were so many people introduced in the first few pages that maybe you could do it with Lewis because you figure out she slept with him in the past. Or
What?
Okay. Yeah, they held hands. but that there are so many people that she brings up, and I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Well, a bunch of
Well, if
aliases.
yeah, well, yeah. Well, if you get rid of the two backstories, that gets rid of a lot. It gets rid of the brothers. It gets rid of Mr.
Then who's
Her
Cockcroft?
mentor was.
Like Cockcroft? Who's that?
He's obviously a
I mean,
scientist.
See,
He's a
but they're
scientist.
sorry,
that's
yeah.
not explained, who he is and where he is. So
Right.
that's something that needs explained. I mean,
Yeah,
there is a
right.
Cockcroft in real life in
Right.
this story.
But I
famous
wouldn't
physicist,
assume that
but-
we know. I didn't know. I
Right.
wouldn't assume that I know. I'm so sorry, but I have the engineering background, not the physics background. So we didn't go down that road after freshman year.
I would like to see more meaningful dialogue. So although you wanted to strike or have it just well cheerio, then I like more conversation on the phone or get rid of it. But it reminded me of Seinfeld when George and Jerry are planning their sitcom, their story about nothing. They start a script and one says, okay, I walk in and say hi. And then you say hi. And it's just so dull. It's so simple. So to have, well then, cheerio, all right, bye. I need more.
But
I
what about the
certainly need
second
more
page?
about the train with Jack, codename Jack, on the train. He just mentions chocolate cake. And he says, you need an alias. But he doesn't hand her a piece of paper with ideas for aliases, doesn't give her
Yes,
a new
he
identity,
does.
doesn't hand her paper, sorry. He
No, he
doesn't.
gives
her- He does
There's a
hand-
Well, he-
portfolio between,
I
there's no
actually
Gives
real
her the names of the
conversation.
other
I actually
scientists.
had a
Thank you.
question
Yeah.
about
Please.
that. Did she know all the other scientists? Because
Yeah, 'cause
Well,
she
she knows
said
Billy
one of them
Porter doesn't speak English.
Yeah.
all
so
right,
she
because I
does.
was going to say normally you wouldn't just say these are their real people names and there are these aliases because you wouldn't want
Right.
to give that away. Unless
I
you
did have
have
to
Right.
read that twice. I didn't understand what was happening, and after like maybe the third time, I'm like, oh, I see. These are the people.
Yeah,
These
I
are their
did too.
aliases. So
Right.
I would just kind of clarify that a little bit, but. I had to
Yeah.
read it.
And I didn't love the start. I love the concept of the start, but I want you to really grab the reader's attention. And she received 2 overseas calls. Okay. One was to prepare for the second, whose purpose in terms of
Too
telling
wordy.
too long, thank
Yeah, I
you.
wrote that.
And that is, seems so
Complex.
casual. So why, I wrote, how so? How was the first to prepare for the second? If you could just clarify that and make it,
It could
Laura
be
said-
more of a scene.
yes, yes.
Right.
You know,
sure.
she's in her office, wherever she is, she gets a call. It's kind of mysterious
Yes.
and just tells her she's going to receive a call.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's
good.
kind of,
Mhm.
you know, that's kind of interesting right there. And then she doesn't know what is going on, or maybe she has an inkling
Maybe
of
she has
what's
an
going
idea
on.
because they're
Yeah.
all getting the call, right?
And then she gets the call.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
And
yeah.
I like the first. I like Mary received 2 overseas calls, 1 hour apart. The first was to prepare her for the second.
That's good.
Period.
Start with that, yes,
done.
but it,
That's
it-
Done.
Right,
And
right.
then
just,
I think
sort
that's a great
rest
Papers
first
on.
line. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Don't
Um,
add to it. It's
Yeah, it
that's
is a
good.
first
Where I
line.
Yep.
would add was how they got on the train. All of a sudden they're on a train.
Yep.
And then the
Well, the transitions
the-
between scenes were.
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
the oh golly, perpendicular to the square. And I read this just as it. Actually, I made a few errors in my reading, but perpendicular the plaza because that's how it says. I would put perpendicular to the plaza. But right after that, it's just page 5. Sorry, is it WAC or is it WAC? I'm not sure how one says that. The general, Sir James and Mary, and then it talks about the meal they ate, and I don't know why that's important.
Yep.
Where they're eating,
Yep.
when did they disembark?
Yep.
And I thought really good place to add detail would be the 2 women in the front seat. A, why is she there? Is it protocol for her to be seated in the front seat with this WAC driver? And do they interact? Do they have eye contact?
What,
do they
they
have
dealt with the driver?
conversations? The 2
well, I
women.
wrote, who cares all about the driver? He's not in the
I
scene,
want-
so why do
but
you
it's
need to
another
go in-
woman in this world
That's
of
interesting.
men. I
Yeah.
want
Oh,
to
it
see
was?
how
That's a
they
good point.
interplay.
Where does it say that the driver was a woman?
Well,
Whack.
so she's a whack.
That's what whack
It's-
is.
That's what
Women
whack
Army,
is.
Women's
Women
Army
Army
Corps.
Corps.
Yeah.
Oh.
I looked
Okay,
it up.
sorry.
I looked it up, Sue.
But is
I
Sir
didn't know.
James the general?
No.
No, he's
No.
with the
So
general.
who's?
He's with the
but
general.
where's the general in this? Is the general
in the back
talking?
seat.
He shows up
We
to
don't
pick
know.
them up.
Yeah, he
Yes.
shows up
But
at
we
the
don't know
train
who's
his
the
full
station.
general?
purpose.
Like how? Like all of a sudden
Groves.
the general? Like who is it?
General Leslie Groves, the head of the Manhattan Project.
But maybe they should say that.
Listen
You
to
can't
you,
assume
you
people
know.
are going to know that.
Right.
Right.
I did
can't?
not.
See, for some of us, you got
I
to fill
did
in those
not.
details.
Yeah.
I
You know,
blame the
for us, it
schools.
wasn't
You
like you had me at
cannot-
physics. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
You cannot make that assumption,
Yeah.
right? You want to
Yeah.
teach people.
Yep.
Do you know what I did like? I liked Mrs. McKibben's sort
I
of
liked Mrs.
reverse
Yeah, that was
McKibben's
very good.
disguise. I love
Right.
that. She goes
Yeah.
home and gets all gussied up. That was perfect.
I
That was
liked
You know, if you
her,
go
though.
back to
I
that,
liked her.
if you go back to a second though about that, the side street perpendicular,
Yes.
which I'm like, all right, that was too much. That was too much. by the time we got there, I didn't even know where we were because she had gone back,
Yep.
and I'm like, where the hell are they?
Lewis, New Home.
Because,
Yep.
right,
Home,
Right,
the
that's
next
why I asked,
couple
where are they? Where'd they
years.
get
well,
left off?
because
Yeah.
you were taken away from
Yep.
that
Right.
because she's doing
Yes.
more thinking and
Right.
backstory again.
Yes.
Exactly.
So that's another example of where you just want to be linear
Yeah.
because otherwise you're going to lose us.
Yeah. I have to say, I think that she's a really good character. I think she's very
Yes.
human.
Yes.
And I think that
and
she
funny.
is, yes, and
And you relate to her.
Yep.
Relatable?
and a really good introduction to this world
Yes.
because I don't know, she's going to have her own take on things and her own views on things, and plus she's a woman. What a
In the
what
1940s,
a
right?
remarkable, distinction for her to be there. I mean,
Yeah.
really
Given the time.
mostly the only other women involved in the Manhattan Project were the ones doing the calculations. They would literally hand these women sheets of numbers, and it's like,
computers. when
yeah,
we were
that's right. They were
computers,
computers. That's right. They were calculators.
Well, the other interesting thing too with having her be, really funny and more casual is that you're going to pull people in who normally wouldn't want to hear about the Manhattan Project.
Sure.
I mean, we're
Yes.
interested
That's right.
in that, and we're in the engineering physics world,
Yeah.
so that's something that automatically would interest us. We might pick up a different book about it that's nonfiction, right?
Right.
But someone who would normally not want to know about it because you
Right.
have a character like that, they'd want to be drawn
Exactly.
into it, and then they'll
Yep.
learn about it
There was
too.
a children's book recently written about the Manhattan Project and what happened. I think
Oh,
it
really?
was. I think
For
it was.
what age group?
I think it was probably YA. I can
Okay.
imagine the middle grade would. I don't know if it was called The Making of the Bomb, or The Bomb. I'll have to think about it and we can kind of write it in. But it was really, it was
Okay.
really
have
well
heard of
written and
that.
it was really well
Huh.
done. And from someone who's not a physicist,
Yeah.
I could understand it. And they talked about, a lot of it was told from Oppenheimer's point of view. But it
Huh.
was really, and it went all the way to the actual dropping up
So it was
of the
accessible.
bomb
Mm,
and what happened. And
great.
it was
Wow.
fascinating and terrifying. you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it went through the tests and everything. So it's a fascinating topic, even if you don't have expertise like you
Right.
do in this. And it was meant for a young audience, that book, and it did very well. It
That's
did very well.
interesting.
I'll get the author and the
Please.
book
Okay.
for you.
Yeah, that would be good.
I think this has promise. I really
It
do.
definitely
Oh, yeah.
has.
Yeah,
The
definitely.
title is very interesting, The Afterglow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking about that offline, what that meant.
Yep.
Yeah, that was good. What else? I mean, the other things I had in here were more just comments that went along with what we've already talked about, just a little bit more specifically.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
page 6. Her disguise was clever, talking about Mr. McKibbin's. In the middle of that paragraph, it says, I imagine at the end of the day, I think you slipped up on pronouns. I think you want to say Mary imagined, right?
No, she
I
imagined.
That's from a letter.
Ooh.
She's writing a
golly,
letter.
please forgive me. Thank you, thank you.
Right. And then
Yeah,
the
but
next,
that's not clear, and that's another way.
No,
you
it does
put
censored letter to, please
Well,
forgive
Yeah,
me.
but
yes,
it's not
yes.
set
Yeah.
off as if
right,
like,
this can be
Indented.
it needs to be
italicized.
indented or
Okay.
italicized.
Yep.
And then the next paragraph where she said she leaned forward and placed a matronly hand on Mary's shoulder. I think you need to take out matronly because
Right.
the whole,
Doesn't go with
with what she's,
the image.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
So take that out.
Right.
And Mrs., Mr., they need periods at the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was
They're
adding a
here.
lot of periods.
This is
So-
the U.S., Christopher.
Yeah, so, why, did they not do
Oh,
that
did they not do
over
that?
us?
No.
I think, oh.
Very
okay.
often British do not use.
Oh, is that
But you're
true?
right, but you can't do that here,
Right.
even if you're using the right language.
Yep. Yep.
Anything else? Anyone have anything else?
No. Really good. I'm in.
I liked it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if all that backstory is, the diverting is taking out, then you've got something really good
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, pull us into the story first, and then we'll be interested in her past.
Right.
You know.
And like I said, some little things you can just introduce into the dialogue that you really want to know,
Yep.
like how she won the award.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, great. So Christopher, thank you so much for submitting. And thank you everyone else for joining us today for this episode of Writers Infusion. We will see you next time. Keep writing.